Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Unstoppable Dad Project. Appreciate you taking the time, as always, out of your week to have a listen to the podcast that we have going on here. If you're new here, or even if you've been here for a while, if I could ask you some massive favors. Number one, make sure you are subscribed on whatever podcast platform you are listening to us on, whether that be Spotify, Apple, Google. We're on all the podcast platforms. Please jump on there and make sure you are subscribed. That way you will get notified whenever a new episode drops first before anybody else. The other thing, follow us on the socials, the Unstoppable Dad Project on Facebook and at the Unstoppable Dad on Instagram. That way you can stay up to date with everything else that's going on. And as you are aware, if you've listened to this podcast for a while, obviously I have some paid programs where I help you get back on track or get some results within your training. The programs that I write are specifically for fathers and busy parents. So if you need some help with that, there is a link in the show notes where you can book in a time to have a chat and we can see whether what we offer is, or what I offer is a good fit for you and the goals that you are looking to achieve. Now that the housekeeping is out of the road, this week I want to talk about a topic, and this is something that I've touched on a little bit over the last couple of years of doing this podcast, but it's something that comes up a lot in my life, and it also comes up a lot in the lives of the clients that I coach and just people in my life. I think it's just something that people come up against in general, right? Because if we're looking to make a change or we're looking to take action on something, especially something that is new, there is an element where we want to make sure that we're not going to mess up. For the most part, people are scared of failure. I know I am. I know most people that I work with are, but failure is just a part of life. And this is something that a conversation that I find that I'm having a little bit more with my 7-year-old as well too, now that she's starting to grow up a little bit more and do her own things and put herself out into the world a little bit more. But failure is just part of life. So for me and for a lot of the people that I've talked to around this, we tend to think a lot about things that we need to do before taking action on it. And there is an element where you do need to think about what you're doing. You know, there's an old saying, which is measure twice, cut once. And that's kind of testament to the fact that I think you do need to have a plan. But for me, especially when it comes to new things, it comes to taking that first step or taking a step with a change or something different or something that's new to me, I have a really bad habit of chronically overthinking things and not actually doing anything with it. And what that leads to, that inaction tends to lead to some angst and anxiety around doing it. And the more I put it off and the more I think about it, the more stories I build up around that thing, and sometimes to a point where I never actually do anything with it. I'll actually use this podcast as an example. I probably should have started this podcast 12 months before what I did. And what I did was I just thought about all the things that weren't going to be right if I started it. And look, I'll tell you right now, there are a lot of things within the way I present and I do this podcast that I would like to change. And every week I still revisit that and I think about that. And I think about, should I get more guests on the show? Should I be doing more episodes every week? I need a new camera. I need a new microphone. All these things are all stuff that I think about all the time. And when I eventually started to do it and seen that people were listening to it, I realized that I was just overthinking it. There's still needed to be a plan. I still had a plan in place for, all right, I'm going to do one show a week. It's going to be about 15 to 20 minutes. I obviously need a microphone. If I'm going to do a video version of it, I need a camera, which to start off with, I didn't have any video for it. It was just all audio, which is one of those things where if I had have waited until I was doing video, I would have put it off longer. So by using this as an example, I just want you to see, for me, this overthinking thing is something that has stopped me from taking action on the podcast, but also a lot of other things in life as well too. And this chronic overthinking is something that it's hard to get over because we don't want to fail. It's human nature, I think, to want to succeed, to want to do things well, and to want to be successful. And the fact is, when you try something for the first time, you're going to suck at it. It is not going to be good. You are potentially, depending on what it is, you may get some ridicule for it, but you will get better at it. Doing more of it and not thinking about things and just taking more action can tend to lead to you firstly getting good at whatever it is that you've been overthinking about, but also secondly, actually getting you some results and getting you some feedback. And then when you start to take action, sometimes when we do get feedback and potentially negative feedback, or we fail, rather than looking at that as a failure or looking at that as we've messed up or we're a failure, like we're personally a failure, and taking that as feedback to refine and create something better or create a better approach, is a better way to do things. But the only way you work out what is not going to work is to actually take action on it and see if it's going to work, and then adjust and recalibrate and then take more action. So that you have to stop thinking and start doing. I have to stop thinking and start doing. And this is something that's come up in my life a lot. And the reason I'm doing a podcast on this now is, even though it's a recurring theme throughout my life and the life of people that I work with, I was listening to a podcast where, and I've been doing a little bit more of a deep dive around kind of the science around training, the science around nutrition and things like that, and kind of going down some rabbit holes with that. And they were talking about, and there's one common theme that I'm noticing with a lot of even particular scientific studies and things like that. It almost doesn't matter what the mechanism is. The number one thing that actually sees results out of anything is adherence. So whether people are actually doing what they're setting out to do or not. You know, the people that are, say for example, they were talking about, there was something that I was looking at where people were talking about kind of mobility and flexibility through their hips, right? And they had two groups basically, where they were given the same exercises. One were done in a strict environment, the other ones weren't. And the biggest thing that determined whether they were getting results or not was whether they were actually sticking to the plan, and most importantly, taking action. And there is others, this is such a common thing and a common theme. The big thing is adherence. It almost doesn't matter what the mechanisms are, what the minutiae is, and what the little steps that we have to take are. It's that action and then adherence. So if there's something and there's a change that you've been looking to make over your life, whatever it is, whether it be trying to get back into training or whatever the case might be, there are a couple of steps that I think you need to look at. Number one is making sure that it's sustainable for you, and not just sustainable in the short term. Like doing a 6-week challenge or an 8-week challenge and really pushing yourself for a short term. If it's not going to be sustainable on the back end, then you're going to go back to where you were. You may not go back 100% to where you were. And for a lot of people, when they do things like that, they actually pull little things out of it. But there's going to be some form of rebound effect if it's not 100% sustainable. So you need to find something where you are going to be able to adhere to it for the rest of your life. A podcast I was listening to, they were talking about diets, right? And there's 1,000,001 fad diets out there. You've got keto, you've got carnivore, you've got all these things. And I'm not here to argue the validity of those, but for a lot of people, when you look at it as a whole, the people that succeed on those and succeed long term, they succeed because they stick to it. They don't succeed just solely because of the mechanism, whether it be scientific or it be those logistical mechanisms that go into the thing. They succeed because they stick to it. And they succeed because it is sustainable within their lifestyle. And that is going to be different for everybody. So it doesn't matter whatever plan you are looking at, you will have a gut feeling to start off with, hey, can I stick to this? Yes or no? And there's not a maybe question. It really should be, when you look at it, it's a yes or a no. There shouldn't be any in-between ground to begin with. And if the answer's on the yes side, then rather than overthink it and pull it apart and then try and think about ways it can fail or potentially ways you're going to put yourself into a position of failure, or that you might feel that it puts you into a position of failure, start taking action on it. And yes, there are going to be roadblocks. There are potentially going to be things within that aren't going to work, but you're really not going to know until you start doing it. And then when you start doing it and those roadblocks come up, think about how you need to pivot quickly and then take action on that adjusted plan. And that's how you find things that are sustainable for you, whether it be training, whether it be diet, whether it be business, whether it be just time with the family and things like that. The only way you are going to implement change successfully is if you actually take action on a plan. That plan doesn't have to be super well defined. It can be a framework. It can be some guide rails for you to take action, and you can start moving towards where you need to go. And then by doing that, you can refine that plan. You can have a plan B, you can have a plan C, but rather than thinking about all those things to start off with, sometimes for a lot of us, you just need to take action rather than having it truly, truly, fully measured out to begin with. Now, in saying that, if you can get a well thought out plan and take action on it, that is where you are going to have the best results. And that's where you're probably going to be able to find that sweet spot between not having a lot of friction around the change that you're trying to implement. Doesn't mean there's not going to be any, but it means it will probably be minimal. And by having those two things together, then it can be a little bit smoother sailing. But even with that, the underlying tone and the big thing that needs to be taken away from this podcast and this whole conversation and this whole topic is you have to take action on it. Because I think what a lot of us are looking for, me included, is we're looking for the perfect plan that's not going to fail and everything's going to go smoothly. And that's just not life. That's just not reality. It doesn't matter how good a coach is. It doesn't matter how good you are. There are going to be elements of things that you want to implement that are not going to work. The plan is not always going to go according to the plan. The plan is going to hit a roadblock. It's going to hit a snag. And then when that happens, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard. And when it's hard, we need to think of how do I adjust quickly to get back to taking action. Because if there's one thing in my life that I've noticed, when I get caught in these spirals where I'm not doing anything and I feel anxious and I feel overwhelmed about everything that's going on, it's because I'm generally not taking action on things that I've set out to do. So what that creates for me is it creates this thought spiral where I keep thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking, and I keep trying to look for the easy way out. And the easy way out is to actually start doing something. Because when I start doing things and I start taking action, then I start moving in a direction. Might not quite be the right direction, but it's a direction. And then from there, once I take action, I can adjust and I can move. But I get caught in this chronic overthinking where I'm trying to look for that perfect plan, the easy way to implement, the thing that the low-hanging fruit that I need to do in order to get out. And when I think about it too much and I don't actually do something, it almost bleeds into everything else in life. There's a feeling of angst, there's a feeling of overwhelm, there's anxiety, and because of all that, because I'm not actually doing anything, I'm also not being true to my word. So my self-worth and how I feel about myself is not good because I'm not being true to what I say I'm going to do. I'm going to go and I'm going to do this thing. Okay. But I need to do this. I need to adjust this. I need a better plan. The plan's not quite right yet. And then all of a sudden it's this spiral. And sometimes it gets to a spiral that becomes very hard to get out of. And then when I sit back, I look at everything and I take a bird's eye view of what's going on and I go, hey, I actually haven't done anything on this. I actually have no right to really feel bad about this project or this thing that I'm looking at because I'm not doing anything with it. So then I start taking action. And then I can start to gain some data and I can start to gain some points as to what I need to improve, where I need to pivot, and what I need to do. And then when results start rolling in, then all of a sudden I start to get a little bit more confidence. But that all stems from taking action and being true to my word and actually following through on a plan, even though it might be a rough plan. And maybe it might not be the right plan, but at least by taking action, I get to determine 100% one way or the other whether I'm moving in the direction that I want to or not. So action will, for the most part, always trump a well thought out plan. But the two of them together is always going to be the best for you. But it doesn't matter if that plan can be the best plan in the world. It might not be the best for you, but it can be the best plan in the world. But if you don't take action on it, you're not going to get anywhere. So as hard as it is, you don't want to get bogged down with thinking. You want to start to get to the doing, and that's where those results are going to lie, and that's where hopefully you can start to move in a better direction and feel better about whatever it is that has maybe been causing you a bit of angst, anxiety, or whatever the case might be. So let me know if that's something that you're guilty of. I honestly think, and this is just opinion, because I've obviously worked with a lot of people over the last decade and a half. I actually think it's something that everybody's guilty of in some area or aspects of their life. Not in every aspect of their life, but I think certain aspects. So let me know what experiences you've had with that. Send me a message if you want to chat about it. I'm actually quite interested to where it manifests, this chronic overthinking in different parts of different people's lives, and how that stops you from potentially stepping into something new that you want to achieve. So thanks for listening. Hope you got something out of it. Let me know your experiences on the topic, and I will see you next week. Goodbye.